What's up, guys? Welcome to the Peer Review Podcast. My name is Caleb Davis, and I have notes. Before we get started today, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And also make sure to follow us on X at peerreview_pod and on TikTok at Peer Review Podcast. First off, here's a happy late New Year's. I returned back from Chicago a little later than I anticipated, so I couldn't record on Wednesday how I intended. But nonetheless, I have an exciting show for you guys today. I'm going to start with a recap of the Celtics versus Timberwolves and that complete shootout of a game last night. Very entertaining to watch. And then I'm going to move into the All-Star game and just the first round of fan voting results so far and just my thoughts. And also my prediction on the West and East starters. And just the starters for right now, not the reserves. And then I'm going to give a quick update on Jaden Ivey and his injury that he suffered on Wednesday against the Magic. And then I'm going to finish off with a soliloquy about Jimmy Butler, Pat Riley, and the Miami Heat. Starting us off, the Celtics versus Timberwolves game, like I mentioned before, was a complete shootout. The final score was 118-115, and it ended up in a Celtics win. And I had a couple big takeaways from this game. The first was that it was a shootout, and I thought it was a great example of the increased amount of three-point shooting that you keep hearing about in the NBA, and just the influx and the increase in teams and the amount of three-point shots that they are taking each game. The Celtics and Wolves combined to shoot 52 threes in the first half. Like, this game was just nuts. They came out of the gate, and the first 11 out of 12 shots were threes. But a lot of these shots were going in, so you can't even be mad if teams are hitting shots. Like, it's a bad product when you have, the Hornets versus, I think it was the Bulls or whoever they kept playing, and they'd shoot a bunch of threes and miss all of them, like, or maybe the Wizards. I don't remember, but a couple of matchups you kept hearing about, like, games like that, they suck. But when teams are hitting shots, it's fun to watch, especially when fouls aren't being called and the game's just flowing. No, it feels like the Celtics and Timberwolves, whenever they match up, is always very competitive and very close and hard-fought games, and this one was no different. The Wolves are 1-5 against the Celtics in their last 6 matchups, just for the record. But like I said, a lot of the games are very close, like within 10. I think one of those out of the 6 was an 11-point win. Like, all of them are very close games, and the series between the two it's so fun to watch because, they have the star power. Both teams play defense. The Timberwolves have regressed a little bit on offense, but they're still exciting to watch because of Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. But I'm going to start with the Celtics and just kind of touch on how they won this game and some of their key contributors and then some bigger moments throughout the game. So one of the big things that I'm going to start with was the Celtics is their offensive resilience, because they were playing this game without Jaylen Brown and another game without Porzingis, which that's kind of a common for them as of late. But their offense just never misses a beat. Their key contributors this game were Tatum and White, with everyone else on the roster chipping in throughout the game. And this is just a testament to the amount of talent that they have on the roster and the amount of three-point shooting and defenders as well. Like, almost everyone in their roster and all of the lineups that they play, like, they have two-way players. So it just works out with their scheme and how they like to play basketball. Jason Tatum, especially in this game, he took over big in the third quarter, just hitting jumpers after jumper. He ISO Rudy Gobert and hit like a nasty deep step back 3 on him. Like, his shooting has just improved so much this season, juxtaposed to last season and how the playoffs went, and even like carrying over into the Olympics. And I'm starting to come around on Tatum a little more. Like, as a Heat fan, I've always had a slight hatred for the Celtics, but I got Tatum on my fantasy team. I keep mentioning that. And so I have to root for him because I want to win in my league. And he's just, especially with the improved shooting, like, I'm enjoying watching him. And I guess my feelings towards a lot of like star players, like back in the day when I was younger, and like I used to despise like Curry and KD because they were going against Bron, but I don't really do that anymore. I just kind of try and appreciate everyone because everyone's so damn talented. But back to the game at hand, Tatum finished the game with 33 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists, and chipping in 3 steals. And he just was so dominant, especially without Jaylen Brown. Like, he really stepped up. He hit shots when he needed to. He guarded Anthony Edwards for the majority of the game. So just doing it on both ends, and he came through when they needed him. Now, the other guy on the Celtics offense that really stepped up and really chipped in, and he's been doing this all season, like it's kind of expected of him at this point, but Derek White, he chipped in 26 points, and I just feel like he is always the guy to hit big shots for them. Like whenever it's like a close game, 2, 3 possession game, final 2, 3 minutes, and you need like a bailout three or like just some type of deep like contested three, he always hits it. And it was no different in this game. He hit this contested. He was on the right wing, and they got like the inbound with like 2 seconds left, and he hit this contested bank three. Like he didn't even think it was going in, and he put the Celtics up 8 with 2 minutes left, and it was just a huge shot. And the Timberwolves eventually like crawled back into the game, but this was kind of the separator, and it kind of prevented the Wolves from coming back. And one thing I want to shout out on the Celtics part, they won this game despite the Timberwolves shooting 55.3% from three. So they had an insane shooting night, and they were just able to weather the storm, keep playing Celtics basketball, and making shots, and they ended up getting the dub. I think the main factors outside of that contributed to the Celtics win, outside of White and Tatum and the rest of the roster making threes, was Boston's defense. Like Joe Mazzulla has been talking about them being more aggressive, fouling a little more, forcing more turnovers, because they've never been a team that forces a lot of turnovers, and it seems like they got the message this game. They made a real big effort. Like they put an earnest on playing harder defense, getting steals, forcing Minnesota into turnovers, and it was shown in the box score. Like Minnesota had 15 turnovers, and Boston was able to score 22 points on these turnovers, as opposed to the Celtics only having 4 of their own. And it was kind of just that simple. Like they were able to turn the Wolves over, get out in transition, they'd come down, swing it around the perimeter. They'd either get a three or get some type of paint bucket. And that was kind of the story of the game. Whenever the Wolves would kind of battle back, the Celtics would just buckle down, get a stop, get out in transition, and get a bucket. And it was that simple for them. And I just props to the Celtics, because they went into this game shorthanded, and they got a win against a Western Conference team that's fighting to get wins at the moment. And it was a big win for them. Now, onto the Timberwolves. I thought Anthony Edwards really struggled tonight. Not just his like shooting and finishing around the rim, but just his decision making. Like the Celtics were trapping and doubling him a lot. And he talked about this after the game. Like he was frustrated with it. And just this season in general, like he's been seeing a lot more double teams and a lot more traps and people trying to take the ball out of his hands. And he's right. It's been happening. And there's a couple reasons for it. Like he's a really good player that obviously you have to trap him. But it's also the Wolves' lack of spacing. Like they have 3 guys pretty much consistently out there that aren't very good shooters. Like tonight, Randall and Jaden McDaniels were knocking them down, but normally that's not the case. And like obviously Rudy Gobert is not stretching the floor for you at all. But when you have non-shooters out there, it allows for the floor to be shrunk, and there's just less space for you to operate. And I think this is a direct correlation to why you see Ant taking so many threes this season. And like, yes, he's been making them, which is good for like his future outlook, but he hasn't been getting to the line as much. He hasn't been getting to the paint as much. And I just think getting to the rim would be a better shot for him, but that's not really capable. It's not really possible for him with the lack of spacing on the team. And I understand his frustration. Like he continues to keep making it clear to the media and to his team that he is frustrated. But I think there comes to a point, like I think he's spending too much time during the game, like trying to talk to the ref and argue calls. And it's similar to Luka. Like I think when you start noticing it, like, oh, you're just not getting back on defense because you want to argue about a foul call that you're not gonna get. Like they're not gonna change their call. Like there's nothing you can do about it in the moment. You can argue, and yeah, they'll look at it later. Maybe they'll take you a little more serious, but now you just gave up a 3 on the other end because you're not getting back because you're arguing with the refs. And I don't really like seeing stuff like that, if I'm being completely honest, because it shows that you're losing focus, and it hurts your team in the long run. And like I said earlier, that wasn't the only cause, but the Wolves lost this game due to turnovers, mainly because they had a great shooting night. They did a good job battling on the glass. Their bench unit, like their bench was really good. the bench kind of brought them back. Julius Randle was a part of that, but they had this lineup with Naz Reid, Julius Randle. That they had I think he's a rookie, but he's a forward. Josh Minott. He's pretty good. He had a poster that like got the crowd going. And he just did a solid job in the fourth. But yeah, and then they had Nikhil Alexander Walker, and then I think it was Dante DiVincenzo. But that 5-man group like kind of brought them back and made it a game again. But one thing I want to say about Ant and the double teams, like he's bad when he's trapped or double. Like you saw it last year in the playoffs, and it feels like he hasn't improved that much on decision making out of the traps or doubles that when they occur. Like he always tries to beat doubles with the dribble instead of just making like the quick pass. Like last night you had guys hitting shots too. Like you should be spraying the ball out a little more. And he has 6 assists. Like I don't want to make it seem like he just wasn't passing, but he was hesitant. And when you're hesitant, like the defense is able to rotate and take away those lanes, like take away your passing angles, and it just makes things a little harder. And it eats time off the clock. So now instead of having 12 seconds to operate, you have 7, and it kind of showed in some of their turnovers and some of their missed shots. And I get he has a score first mentality, but all great players face this type of scheme. And if he wants to take that next step, because there is a leap for him to take, and like Ant has, I think he's going to be the best guard in the league eventually one day, but he has room for improvement. And I think he has to learn how to be comfortable handling doubles and getting better at just making decisions out of them. And it wouldn't hurt to put some actual shooters around him to make that simpler for him. But until that happens, you just kind of got to work with what you got. And as an aside, real quick, before I finish up on the Timberwolves, him as a scorer, like I get that, but the quicker you learn how to make decisions like out of these type of schemes, the quicker teams will be forced to stop doubling you, because if you're just making the right pass and your team is just scoring efficiently, they're going to have to stop doubling you, and that's going to allow you more opportunities to go one-on-one like he kind of likes to do. So just a little bit on that. But on to the All-Star voting in the first round. First, just for those of you who don't know, fan votes make up about 50% of the total votes. So this is not like the complete set voting results. And there's also a little time before they're actually finalized. The other 50%, I didn't mention, but it goes towards players and media. So take that with a grain of salt. But for each team, 5 starters are selected. It's 2 guards and 3 front court players. And I guess my initial standouts from this, I thought the front courts on both conferences were pretty fair. Like I didn't really see anything crazy up there. Like you had LeBron, you had AD, Jokic, Wemby for the West, and then the East, like Tatum, Giannis, like the guys you would expect. The one guy who's probably not, he was up high, but he probably won't get voted in is Paulo, just because he hasn't played. But otherwise, I think he would have been a lock to be an All-Star. But there's next season. But where I had some discrepancies was the backcourts. I thought the West was pretty solid. The West, both sides, the guards are stacked in both conferences. That's kind of something I noticed. But Shea, Luka, Curry, Ant-Man, and Ja, I think are all very deserving of an All-Star nod. And sadly, only about 4 of the 6 of them are going to make it if we're looking strictly at play this season and not a players, cachet and prestige. Out of that like 6-man group, I think one guy who probably I'd say he's the last on the pecking order for that group is Curry. If we're not factoring in I think Curry's gonna make the All-Star team the same way LeBron and KD, no matter how they really play. Like yes, they have to play to a certain standard, but he's probably gonna make it. But I'd say like out of that group, he's probably the one playing the worst, and I think his team is the lowest right now out of that group. So, but the other spot that's probably gonna be lost, like out of the Shea, Luka, Curry, Kyrie, and Ja group, is I think Luka probably won't make it just because he's going to have to miss a bunch of more games with that injury. I don't know how many exactly, but if he continues to have to miss games with the injury, he likely, the same with like all NBA nods and stuff like that. Like, well, you can only miss, it's a 17 game, something like that. Like you have to hit the 65 game requirement. 17 games, I think that off the top of it. Yeah, I think my math is right. But yeah, so that would be the case that he doesn't make it. And then that would make it Shea, Kyrie, Ant and Ja all making the All-Star team, but it's up for debate, and you still have time. Guys might get injured. Guys might start playing better. Like, who knows? The Warriors just blew out the Sixers. That might spark something for them. They might win out for the month of January. You don't know. So that's why I said there's still time. Things are gonna forever be changing up until the results officially need to be in. And then on the Eastern Conference front, the kind of three guards that I think are a lock, like I said, barring any injury or a suspension or something like that, are Dame, Donovan Mitchell, and Jalen Brunson. I think all three of them are locks. And I found it kind of interesting that Jalen Brunson has not been getting like a ton of love from New York fans like he was last season. Like Cat, and I get Cat is new, like he's been playing really well. It's deserved, but it's a little surprising to me. But he wasn't as high up as I thought he would be, just with that New York fan base. There's so many, they have so many fans. Like they can all same with like Laker fans. Like they can alter the results, and he was still up there, but not where I expected. But there's a couple people on the list that kind of like Jordan Poole being on the list. Like I get he's flashy. He is probably I didn't know the Wizards had that big of a fan base. Maybe it's still Warriors fans, but I thought he had no business being on the list. And as a Heat fan, I was kind of saddened that Tyler Hero was so low on the list because I think he's been having a great season, even though the Heat haven't been that good. I think they're about like the 6th seed. I'm going to talk about them later, so I'm not even going to get into that. But the one person at the top of the list who kind of raised an eyebrow for me was LaMelo Ball. Like, I think he's been having a pretty good season. I didn't realize he had that many fans, like people voting for him. But I also think like he's playing for the third worst team in the league. And yeah, he's averaging 30, but it's on poor efficiency. Like he's attempting 25 shots a game. And this isn't exactly similar, but same way like Bradley Beal years ago didn't make it when he was averaging 30. Like, I just think you should reward guards who are on winning teams. There's three guards who I think are deserving of that fourth spot in the East. And as a Pistons fan, not even just being biased, I think Cade has been having an all-star season. I think Trae Young, the way he's been propelling the Hawks, playing well and just keeping them in games and helping them win games. And then Darius Garland, like he doesn't have the counting numbers that a lot of the other all-star nods right now do, but he's on the best team in the league, and I wouldn't be mad if he made it. Like I think he's definitely deserving as well. But for my predictions for both sides, my Western All-Star starters, as things currently stand, I think it's going to end up being Shea, Ja. Like I said, I think Luka is going to miss because of injuries. LeBron, KD, and then Jokic. And LeBron or KD both of them could kind of fluctuate. Like Anthony Davis might end up in there. I just kind of think they give the nod to those veterans, especially as they're kind of aging out. And then on the East, I think it'll be Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Tatum, Giannis, and Cat, which I think those are pretty much a lock. The only one that might change up, Dame might make it over Brunson, but I don't even see that, to be honest. Just because the Knicks are playing so well and the Bucks are still like they've been winning, but they're sitting at like 6th or 7th in the East right now. So, but like I said, things could change very quickly. So who knows? Now, real quick, update on Jaden Ivey. He suffered a broken fibula in his left leg during their win against the Magic on Wednesday, and he was just playing so good, which made it like even sadder. Like, obviously, you never want to see players get hurt, especially your players like on your favorite teams. But it could have been worse. It's kind of the route I'm taking because like him getting stretchered off like that, like you never know. And this is not an injury that's going to like end his season. I thought Cole Anthony, like, he dove at his leg and like he was going for the ball and it wasn't intentional. I thought it was definitely reckless. Like it was just it was for lack of a better term, like I thought it was just a reckless play, and like he obviously felt bad. Like they showed him like he was like crying, tearing up a little bit. Like you're not gonna hold that against him, but it was tough to see. The Pistons are currently sitting at 15 and 18 on the season, and then the ninth seed in the East. And Ivy was just starting, like he's been playing solid all season, but he was starting to really, really pick it up as of late. Like his shooting was increased all across the boards. Like he was scoring a lot better. He was defending a lot better. And the Pistons were just looking better. Like they were starting to win more games. Like instead of, win one, lose one, they were starting to put together some wins. And they still will do that. But it's sad not having them out there. And like I said, it's not a season-ending injury. Like he had surgery and he's supposed to be reevaluated in about 4 weeks. And it looks like he should return the season if things play out well. And hopefully the Pistons stay up in the mix and he can come back and play in his first playing game this season, maybe make the playoffs. Who knows? But wishing him the best, speedy recovery. They need him back out there. And now I'm gonna take a sip real quick because this heat um this heat talk is gonna take a bit. So I am saddened, very saddened to say, as of yesterday night, Jimmy Butler officially requested a trade from the Miami Heat. Now, this is not really a shock to a lot of fans who closely follow the team. Like on Christmas, Shams reported that Jimmy preferred to be traded. And the three teams on the list were the Suns, which I personally don't buy, the Warriors, and the Rockets as potential trade targets and trade destinations for him. After this past summer, Pat Riley refused to offer him a new max contract extension. So before diving into the details, I want to show Jimmy some love because Jimmy Butler has done it all for the Heat. Since his arrival, he's been the driving force behind the team's success. He's led them to 3 Eastern Conference Finals and 2 Finals appearances, with the one being in his first season with the team. He's consistently elevated his game in the postseason, made so many clutch plays, proven time and time again that he's one of the league's top players, especially when it matters most. And I think Jimmy Butler is going to go down as a Heat legend. He's one of my personal favorite players. Like when I go hoop or when I'm watching film, like I always go back and I watch that Bucks. I think it was game 3 or game 4 where he just took over and he had like 50, I think. And you guys know what game I'm talking about, but he's just one of my favorite players. I practice his moves, like his fadeaways, his pull up, like everything. But he's just continued to give his all to this team in winning scenarios. And maybe if he had more help along the way, he would be sitting on a title or 2 by now. But I just want to start by saying if Jimmy wanted to be traded because he felt like he was being mistreated or that the Heat weren't improving or just that they weren't giving him that extension, I have no problem with it. There's nothing wrong with requesting out, wanting to change the scenery, especially if they're not gonna pay you. Like, I get it. But the story goes a little deeper than that, however. I think both parties, those being like Jimmy Butler and Pat Riley / the Miami Heat, are at fault here. Now, starting with Jimmy Butler, in his time with the Heat, during the regular season, it's consistently been sort of lackluster effort during the regular season, which is frustrating at times, but at times I could understand because he has to do so much once the postseason hits, and the continued lack of improvement to the roster definitely made it more and more difficult as the years went on. Like he was coasting himself because he had, and I this is it's an excuse, but it's an excuse that I can understand because he had to do so much, and as long as the Heat just stayed afloat, his mindset was, "We'll get us there, and that's when we'll make things happen." And he made things happen. As of late, though, since Jimmy returned from his illness or ankle sprain, he'd been playing and just looked like a guy he was disengaged, like he didn't want to be there. Like you could tell, even if you weren't even a fan of the Heat, just watching the game, like he wasn't looking for the ball, he wasn't shooting the ball. Like he'd catch it and get a shot clock violation because he wanted to try and dump it off. Like he just wasn't like he wasn't trying to shoot, he wasn't trying to score, he wasn't taking good shots. Like the post was going around on Twitter where he shot like a one-legged, like kind of leaning corner 3 for no reason, like. And then Bam like looks at him like, "Why'd you shoot that?" And he shrugged, like, "I don't know," like stuff like that. And that was kind of the few things that were kind of just annoying me with this whole process because I don't think you should sabotage your team. Like I get you want out, and I get things aren't going how you would like, but you still have to be a professional. And I don't like the disruptive approach because it affects the team, it affects your coaches, it affects your teammates, and the fans. Like we don't want to see that. Like I said, it's one of my favorite players. Like I don't want to, especially the last couple of years of his career, I don't want to see him like doing stuff like this because it's not a good look. And like he's just, and I'm not blaming this Heat situation on him. Like I want to make that clear now, but he's it's starting to be a bad look on him because he's ended every situation, every team that he's been on. The situation has ended poorly. And I thought Miami was going to be different, but I saw on ESPN today that they were talking about his usage rate this season, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I don't have all the numbers, and like I'm just going to give my general opinion on kind of why his usage might be down this season and well why it is. I think both partiers are at fault again. Like there's no reason his usage rate should be at 20.9% or like his field goal attempts per game this season being at 10.5, especially as your highest paid player. Like he's not shooting the ball and he's also not involved in the offense. I think part of his lower usage rate this season is on coaching and just how they've been utilizing him in the offense. Like Tyler Hero has taken a leap this season and the ball is in his hands a lot more, rightfully so. He's been available. He's been playing really well. Like I said, I think he's an all-star potentially. And also like they're trying to space the floor. I'd get Bam more shots, trying to get him more involved in the offense. That hasn't been, it's improved as of late, but as the season started, it wasn't as good. But I think the other part of the usage rate issue is that just disengagement. Like I mentioned earlier, Jimmy sometimes his effort is lackluster, and this has been for seasons now. But this season specifically, like he's been working himself back from injury consistently. So that I think that plays a part. Like if the team's playing good, you come back from injury, you don't want to insert yourself too much. Like I get that, but like he's been hurt a couple times this season. He's missed 10 games already this season, and I just think, and there's obviously more factors that come into play, but just off the top of my head and just a general, like, quick, I guess, a quick summary of what I was seeing. That's kind of the route I would take. And his comments after the game on Thursday were telling. Like, after the game, he was talking about how he doesn't find joy playing in Miami anymore. And this is where I kind of want to segue to the end portion of the video and just take a look at Pat Riley and the role I think he's had to play in just this entire saga. So I just want to break down the roster management of this team so far. And I want to start by saying, like, I genuinely believe, and I've been saying this for years, like, I think Pat Riley has failed Jimmy Butler. Like, to put it plain and simple. Pat Riley is a Hall of Fame coach, executive, and make no mistake about it, like, the Godfather, like, he's one of one. But for the last 6 seasons, I felt like he's kind of just sat around and let the league pass this team by. I just want to go through the acquisitions that the Heat have made since signing Jimmy Butler in the 2019-2020 season. So that first season when Jimmy signed with the team, they made the big splash. They got Jimmy. They got Iguodala. They got Jay Crowder. And that's when they drafted Tyler Hero. That's also when they went to the finals in the bubble. Now, 2020, 2021, I kind of give all the teams that made deep playoff runs this season, I cut them all some slack because it was such a quick turnaround. Like I think it was like 2 months or 3 months instead of the longer offseason that they normally get. So every team that made a deep run got injured. Like the Lakers got injured, the Heat got injured, like the Celtics got injured. Like every team that was, just running it back got hurt. But in the 2021 season, they signed Avery Bradley, they traded for him, who ended up opting out because of COVID, like because of the COVID-19 and everything going on with that in the pandemic. And then they re-signed Kendrick Nunn, who was a solid player, but he's out of the league now. Like, take that as you will. And then they traded for Trevor Ariza, who was basically a dinosaur at this point. Like, he didn't really play. And this season, after they lost to the Bucks, it was kind of apparent. Like, they got swept, and it was just apparent that the team needed improvement. So what do? The next season, in 2021 and 2022, they trade for Kyle Lowry, who I thought he brought value to the team because he's just a winner, but he was aging at this point, and they signed him to this big deal, this huge contract. Well, they traded on him, and he was on this huge contract, and like even at the time, you're like, you kind of scratching your head, like, I don't know about that. And they also signed PJ Tucker, who was starting to age at this point. He was good for us, but we went up against the Celtics. Jimmy, shoots that famous the pull up three. Like he had Al Horford. It was like I don't know how much time was left, but he shot the three to go for the win instead of trying to go for the tie. Like he probably would have got fouled. You drive Al Horford on in the paint, but neither here nor there. The team was banged up. They were tired. You get it. But again, the lack of firepower from this team is showing. Like, you made it this far again. You were one shot away from going to the finals again. And you lose just because you don't have enough. Like, Tyler Hero got hurt. Guys were just, they were banged up. But again, that lack of firepower is what I'm pointing to. So the 2022-2023 season comes around, and the Heat are the 8th seed, and they go on that crazy run where, they make it out the play-in. Jimmy leads them to the finals. And this season, they drafted Jovic, who didn't really play. They re-signed Caleb Martin, so no new moves. You just re-signed a player, and they re-signed Victor Oladipo, who got injured. Again, after this season, it was apparent. Like, after they went up against the Nuggets in the finals, and it wasn't a competitive series. Like, everyone kind of saw, like, this team needs more firepower. And what Heat fans have been, screaming from the rooftops for years now, like, I felt like it was even more apparent. But no, Pat Riley saw his 8th seed team go to the finals, and he was just like, yeah, we just need to get healthy. Like, we just need to run it back. And during this offseason, every one of the Heat's conference rivals, like one of the big dogs, made moves. And it was so frustrating this summer. Like, this is when they were trying to get Dame, and they missed out on KD, and they missed out on Durant. But the Celtics, I just want to name a few teams that improved and have passed us in those, like, in the years since then. The Celtics that season, after that finals run against the Nuggets, added Drew Holiday and Porzingis. The Bucks stole Dame. The Pacers got Siakam. The Knicks got better. Like, they just improved. That they got Brunson around that time. And the Heat just sat on their hands and did nothing. 2023, 2024 comes around. Jimmy gets hurt. They lose to the Celtics in the first round. This season, they drafted Jaime. Like, they signed Thomas Bryant. They got Kevin Love in the buyout market. But, like, again, no improvement. And that leads us to the 2024-2025 season, where we are at right now. No moves were made. We drafted Khalil Ware, who's been a solid rookie, but he's a rookie. And we signed Alec Burke. That was it. Now, I want you to go through those past 6 years, and you point to me one notable move that really pushed this team. Like I said, we needed firepower. And no big moves were made. Nothing was done. And it's just been frustrating, to say the least. And now things are starting to unfold, and I just think in the Jimmy Butler era, Pat Riley has failed to support his star player in a way that matches his importance to the team. Like, it's been reported, like, he's been clamoring, like, I bring in more talent, like, we need more help. Pat Riley just did not get it done. He has not gotten it done in a very long time. And the final straw for me was Pat Riley's comments to Jimmy during the Celtics series. Like, yeah, he was trolling, he got hurt. But he told him to keep, like, if you're not out here playing against the Celtics, like, keep your mouth shut. And I get the frustration because Jimmy had been hurt all year. Like, he'd been kind of, he coasted through the regular season. And then he got hurt during the play-in, which it was like a freak injury. It wasn't his fault. Like, I think, was it Kelly Oubre? I don't remember who. Someone, like, they landed on his knee. Like, it was just a freak accident. But that's not how you handle your star player, and let alone a player who's carried your team for the past 5 years. Like, that's just not. I don't care who you are. Like, you don't do that to your star player. Like, you could say that in private, but you don't come out and, like, because you make it a bigger deal. Like, you can't walk back that statement. Like, if you say something in private to him, okay, you have plausible deniability. Like, the media, everyone doesn't know, so it doesn't become that big of a storyline. And I get Pat Riley's known for being tough and vocal, and he's a winner, but his stubbornness, like, it's shown over time. Like, it creates friction. And this was one of those moments. Over the past 2 decades, he's consistently pushed stars out of the door. Like, we lost LeBron because of Pat Riley's stubbornness, and he didn't want to acquiesce. I'm not acquiescing to anyone's demands. Like, I don't care if you're LeBron James. And hey, that's his prerogative, but that's what happened. We lost LeBron. We lost D-Wade because they didn't want to pay him in his final years, a guy that had given so much to the franchise. And we eventually got him back, and he retired with the team, but it was just a bad look. And now we're about to lose Jimmy Butler. And yes, there's been championships along the way, but I just think Pat Riley's handling of these situations is setting a troubling precedent for the future. Because if the pattern continues, I just think it's going to get a lot harder for the Heat to retain their top tier talent and attract new stars. Because, like, as a diehard Heat fan, like that's my team. I'm gonna go down watching them. It's tough to watch these relationships break down, and I think this Jimmy Butler situation is gonna get a lot worse before it gets better. If I was a betting man, I think the Heat hold on to Jimmy until the offseason. Like, I don't think they make a trade and get rid of him, just because it makes more sense to hold on to him because you have more flexibility. Like, you can just get rid of him in a sign-in trade, or you could just let him walk and you let that money be off the books. Because if you make a trade for him, especially during the season, you're more than likely just going to be taking back more long-term money, and the Heat don't want to do that. And, like, that's the whole point. They didn't want to do that. But I hope this situation doesn't go as bad as I think it will, because Pat Riley, Jimmy Butler, they're both stubborn, they're both huge personalities, and that's just gonna clash and clash and clash, and who knows. But that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning into the Peer Review Podcast. And please make sure, again, to share the podcast with your friends and family, as well as follow us on X at @PeerReview_pod and on TikTok at Peer Review Podcast to stay up to date with our latest podcast episodes and releases. This is the Peer Review, signing off.